guys, how you doing? So, hi Wonder Lady, nice to see you. So we're doing my hands today. Not bad, it's a little bit shadowy, but it's because I need more lights. But the more lights also makes more, not shadows, but it's harder to see. At least that's what I found. But that's okay. So today I'm just going to be working on some more of these squares while we listen to the other books. So the books today are The Story of the Old Man Who Withered Trees to Flowers, The Jellyfish and the Monkey, and The Quarrel of the Monkey and the Crab. I believe you know one of those. There are probably more than one, I would guess. And how's the focus? Are we focusing okay? Oh, no. We're probably just fine. I'm looking at it on the YouTube part, and I've got the resolution down really low so it doesn't take up my bandwidth and stuff. So, of course, nothing looks all that great. Anyway, so I'm glad to get this shorted out so that it's looking a lot better. And I've got my camera set up now, and you can't see above me, and so it seems to work pretty good. So, awesome. Thank you, Wonder Lady. I appreciate it. So let's see here. Let's get this party started. Mute. Oh, am I really loud? I look like I'm pinning. I'm probably really loud. I'm sorry about that. I shouldn't be pinning, so let's have a look. Oh yeah, that was way too high. Sorry guys, I didn't realize my gain was up really high. I don't need it up so high. Let's see. And that gain is up. Oh my gosh, I don't need all the gain to be up. There. That's probably better for you guys. I'm so sorry about that. I'm not sure why I had the gains up so high. It's probably a lot better, I would guess. And how's my sounding? I had to fiddle with the ha ha ha. Very funny, honey. Oops. End up typing something and then and messing up the stream. That would be fun. So anyway, we're looking better, I think. You're eating lunch, ooh, and you get to hear some awesome stories. So here we are. Mute me.
Chapter 14 of Japanese Fairy Tales. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Carol Good. Japanese Fairy Tales by Yei Theodora OZAKI. Chapter 14. The Story of the Old Man Who Made Withered Trees to Flower. Long, long ago there lived an old man and his wife who supported themselves by cultivating a small plot of land. Their life had been a very happy and peaceful one, save for one great sorrow. and this was they had no child. Their only pet was a dog named Shiro, and on him they lavished all the affection of their old age. Indeed, they loved him so much that whenever they had anything nice to eat, they denied themselves to give it to Shiro. Now Shiro means white, and he was so called because of his color. He was a real Japanese dog, and very like a small wolf in appearance. The happiest hour of the day, both for the old man and his dog, was when the man returned from his work in the field, and having finished his frugal supper of rice and vegetables, would take what he had saved from the meal out to the little veranda that ran round the cottage. Sure enough, Shiro was waiting for his master and the evening tidbit. Then the old man said, "Chin, chin," and Shiro sat up and begged, and his master gave him the food. Next door to this good old couple there lived another old man and his wife, who were both wicked and cruel, and who hated their good neighbors and the dog Shiro with all their might. Whenever Shiro looked into their kitchen, they at once kicked him or threw something at him, sometimes even wounding him. One day Shiro was heard barking for a long time in the field at the back of his master's house. The old man, thinking that perhaps some birds were attacking the corn, hurried out to see what was the matter. As soon as Shiro saw his master, he ran to meet him, wagging his tail, and, seizing the end of his kimono, dragged him under the large yenoki tree. Here he began to dig very industriously with his paws, yelping with joy all the time. The old man, unable to understand what it all meant, stood looking on in bewilderment, but Shiro went on barking and digging with all his might. The thought that something might be hidden beneath the tree, and that the dog had scented it, at last struck the old man. He ran back to the house, fetched his spade, and began to dig the ground at that spot. What was his astonishment when, after digging for some time, he came upon a heap of old and valuable coins, and the deeper he dug, the more gold coins did he find. So intent was the old man on his work that he never saw the cross face of his neighbor peering at him through the bamboo hedge. At last all the gold coins lay shining on the ground. Shiro sat by, erect with pride and looking fondly at his master, as if to say, "You see, though only a dog, I can make some return for all the kindness you show me." The old man ran in to call his wife, and together they carried home the treasure. Thus in one day the poor old man became rich. His gratitude to the faithful dog knew no bounds, and he loved and petted him more than ever, if that were possible. The cross old neighbor, attracted by Shiro's barking, had been an unseen and envious witness of the finding of the treasure. He began to think that he too would like to find a fortune. So a few days later he called at the old man's house and very ceremoniously asked permission to borrow Shiro for a short time. Shiro's master thought this a strange request, because he knew quite well that not only did his neighbor not love his pet dog, but that he never lost an opportunity of striking and tormenting him whenever the dog crossed his path. But the good old man was too kind-hearted to refuse his neighbor, so he consented to lend the dog on condition that he should be taken great care of. The wicked old man returned to his home with an evil smile on his face, and told his wife how he had succeeded in his crafty intentions. He then took his spade and hastened to his own field, forcing the unwilling Shiro to follow him. As soon as he reached a yenoki tree, he said to the dog threateningly, "If there are gold coins under your master's tree, there must also be gold coins under my tree. You must find them for me. Where are they? Where? Where?" And catching hold of Shiro's neck, he held the dog's head to the ground, so that Shiro began to scratch and dig in order to free himself from the horrid old man's grasp. The old man was very pleased when he saw the dog begin to scratch and dig, for he at once supposed that some gold coins lay buried under this tree as well as under his neighbor's, and that the dog had scented them as before. So pushing Shiro away, he began to dig himself, but there was nothing to be found. As he went on digging, a foul smell was noticeable, and he at last came upon a refuse heap. The old man's disgust can be imagined. This soon gave way to anger. He had seen his neighbor's good fortune, and hoping for the same luck himself, had borrowed the dog Shiro. And now, just as he seemed on the point of finding what he sought, only a horrid-smelling refuse heap had rewarded him for a morning's digging. Instead of blaming his own greed for his disappointment, he blamed the poor dog. He seized his spade and with all his strength struck Shiro and killed him on the spot. He then threw the dog's body into the hole which he had dug in the hope of finding a treasure of gold coins, and covered it over with the earth. Then he returned to the house, telling no one, not even his wife, what he had done. After waiting several days, as the dog Shiro did not return, his master began to grow anxious. Day after day went by, and the good old man waited in vain. Then he went to his neighbor and asked him to give him back his dog. Without any shame or hesitation, the wicked neighbor answered that he had killed Shiro because of his bad behavior. At this dreadful news, Shiro's master wept many sad and bitter tears. Great indeed was his woeful surprise, but he was too good and gentle to reproach his bad neighbor. Learning that Shiro was buried under the yenoki tree in the field, he asked the old man to give him the tree in remembrance of his poor dog Shiro. Even the cross old neighbor could not refuse such a simple request, so he consented to give the old man the tree under which Shiro lay buried. Shiro's master then cut the tree down and carried it home. Out of the trunk he made a mortar. In this his wife put some rice, and he began to pound it with the intention of making a festival to the memory of his dog Shiro. A strange thing happened. His wife put the rice into the mortar, and no sooner had he begun to pound it to make the cakes than it began to increase in quantity, gradually, till it was about 5 times the original amount, and the cakes were turned out of the mortar as if an invisible hand were at work. When the old man and his wife saw this, they understood that it was a reward to them from Shiro for their faithful love to him. They tested the cakes and found them nicer than any other food. So from this time they never troubled about food, for they lived upon the cakes with which the mortar never ceased to supply them. The greedy neighbor, hearing of this new piece of good luck, was filled with envy as before, and called on the old man and asked leave to borrow the wonderful mortar for a short time, pretending that he too sorrowed for the death of Shiro, and wished to make cakes for a festival to the dog's memory. The old man did not in the least wish to lend it to his cruel neighbor, but he was too kind to refuse. So the envious man carried home the mortar, but he never brought it back. Several days passed, and Shiro's master waited in vain for the mortar. So he went to call on the borrower, and asked him to be good enough to return the mortar if he had finished with it. He found him sitting by a big fire made of pieces of wood. On the ground lay what looked very much like pieces of a broken mortar. In answer to the old man's inquiry, the wicked neighbor answered haughtily, "Have you come to ask me for your mortar? I broke it to pieces, and now I am making a fire of the wood, for when I tried to pound cakes in it, only some horrid smelling stuff came out." The good old man said, "I am very sorry for that. It is a great pity that you did not ask me for the cakes if you wanted them. I would have given you as many as ever you wanted. Now, please give me the ashes of the mortar, as I wish to keep them in remembrance of my dog." The neighbor consented at once, and the old man carried home a basket full of ashes. Not long after this, the old man accidentally scattered some of the ashes made by the burning of the mortar on the trees of his garden. A wonderful thing happened. It was late in autumn, and all the trees had shed their leaves, but no sooner did the ashes touch their branches than the cherry trees, the plum trees, and all other blossoming shrubs burst into bloom, so that the old man's garden was suddenly transformed into a beautiful picture of spring. The old man's delight knew no bounds, and he carefully preserved the remaining ashes. The story of the old man's garden spread far and wide, and people from far and near came to see the wonderful sight. One day, soon after this, the old man heard someone knocking at his door, and going to the porch to see who it was, he was surprised to see a knight standing there. This knight told him that he was a retainer of a great daimyo, earl, that one of the favorite cherry trees in this nobleman's garden had withered, and that though everyone in his service had tried all manners of means to revive it, none took effect. The knight was sore perplexed when he saw what great displeasure the loss of his favorite cherry tree caused the daimyo. At this point, fortunately, they had heard that there was a wonderful old man who could make withered trees to blossom, and that his lord had sent him to ask the old man to come to him. "And," added the knight, "I shall be very much obliged if you will come at once." The good old man was greatly surprised at what he heard, but respectfully followed the knight to the nobleman's palace. The daimyo, who had been impatiently awaiting the old man's coming, as soon as he saw him, asked him at once, "Are you the old man who can make withered trees flower, even out of season?" The old man made an obeisance and replied, "I am that old man." Then the daimyo said, "You must make that dead cherry tree in my garden blossom again by means of your famous ashes. I shall look on." Then they all went into the garden, the daimyo and his retainers, and the ladies in waiting, who carried the daimyo's sword. The old man now tucked up his kimono and made ready to climb the tree, saying, "Excuse me." He took the pot of ashes which he had brought with him and began to climb the tree, everyone watching his movements with great interest. At last he climbed to the spot where the tree divided into two great branches, and taking up his position here, the old man sat down and scattered the ashes right and left all over the branches and twigs. Wonderful indeed was the result. The withered tree at once burst into full bloom. The daimyo was so transported with joy that he looked as if he would go mad. He rose to his feet and spread out his fan, calling the old man down from the tree. He himself gave the old man a wine cup filled with the best sake, and rewarded him with much silver and gold and many other precious things. The daimyo ordered that henceforth the old man should call himself by the name of Hanasakajiji, or the old man who makes the trees to blossom, and that henceforth all were to recognize him by this name, and he sent him home with great honor. The wicked neighbor, as before, heard of the good old man's fortune, and of all that had so auspiciously befallen him, and he could not suppress all the envy and jealousy that filled his heart. He called to mind how he had failed in his attempt to find the gold coins, and then in making the magic cakes. This time surely he must succeed, if he imitated the old man who made withered trees to flower simply by sprinkling ashes on them. This would be the simplest task of all. So he set to work and gathered together all the ashes which remained in the fireplace from the burning of the wonderful mortar. Then he set out in the hope of finding some great man to employ him, calling out loudly as he went, "Here comes the wonderful man who can make withered trees blossom. Here comes the old man who can make dead trees blossom." The daimyo in his palace heard this cry and said, "That must be the Hanasakajiji passing. I have nothing to do today. Let him try his art again. It will amuse me to look on." So the retainers went out and brought in the impostor before their lord. The satisfaction of the false old man can now be imagined, but the daimyo, looking at him, thought it strange that he was not at all like the old man he had seen before, so he asked him, "Are you the man whom I named Hanasaka Jiji?" And the envious neighbor answered with a lie, "Yes, my lord." "That is strange," said the daimyo. "I thought there was only one Hanasaka Jiji in the world. Has he now some disciples?" "I am the true Hanasaka Jiji. The one who came to you before was only my disciple," replied the old man. "Then you must be more skillful than the other. Try what you can do, and let me see." The envious neighbor, with the daimyo and his court following, then went into the garden, and approaching a dead tree, took out a handful of the ashes which he carried with him, and scattered them over the tree. But not only did the tree not burst into flower, but not even a bud came forth. Thinking that he had not used enough ashes, the old man took handfuls and again sprinkled them over the withered tree. But all to no effect. After trying several times, the ashes were blown into the daimyo's eyes. This made him very angry, and he ordered his retainers to arrest the false Hanasaka Jiji at once and put him in prison for an impostor. From this imprisonment the wicked old man was never freed. Thus did he meet with punishment at last for all his evil doings. The good old man, however, with the treasure of gold coins which Shiro had found for him, and with all the gold and silver which the daimyo had showered on him, became a rich and prosperous man in his old age, and lived a long and happy life, beloved and respected by all. End of chapter 14. The story of the old man who made withered trees to flower. Recording by Carol Good. www.soundsgood.com.
Chapter 15 of Japanese Fairy Tales. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Japanese Fairy Tales by Yei Theodora OZAKI. Chapter 15. The Jellyfish and the Monkey. Long, long ago, in old Japan, the kingdom of the sea was governed by a wonderful king. He was called Rin Jin, or the Dragon King of the Sea. His power was immense, for he was ruler of all sea creatures both great and small, and in his keeping were the jewels of the ebb and flow of the tide. The jewel of the ebbing tide, when thrown into the ocean, caused the sea to recede from the land, and the jewel of the flowing tide made the waves to rise mountains high and to flow in upon the shore like a tidal wave. The palace of Rin Jin was at the bottom of the sea, and was so beautiful that no one has ever seen anything like it, even in dreams. The walls were of coral, the roof of jadestone and chrysoprase, and the floors were of the finest mother of pearl. But the Dragon King, in spite of his wide-spreading kingdom, his beautiful palace, and all its wonders, and his power which none disputed throughout the whole sea, was not at all happy, for he reigned alone. At last he thought that if he married he would not only be happier, but also more powerful, so he decided to take a wife. Calling all his fish retainers together, he chose several of them as ambassadors to go through the sea and seek for a young dragon princess who would be his bride. At last they returned to the palace, bringing with them a lovely young dragon. Her scales were of glittering green like the wings of summer beetles. Her eyes threw out glances of fire, and she was dressed in gorgeous robes. All the jewels of the sea, worked in with embroidery, adorned them. The king fell in love with her at once, and the wedding ceremony was celebrated with great splendor, Every living thing in the sea, from the great whales down to the little shrimps, came in shoals to offer their congratulations to the bride and bridegroom, and to wish them a long and prosperous life. Never had there been such an assemblage or such gay festivities in the fish world before. The train of bearers who carried the bride's possessions to her new home seemed to reach across the waves from one end of the sea to the other. Each fish carried a phosphorescent lantern, and was dressed in ceremonial robes, gleaming blue and pink and silver. And the waves, as they rose and fell and broke that night, seemed to be rolling masses of white and green fire, for the phosphorus shone with double brilliancy in honor of the event. Now for a time the Dragon King and his bride lived very happily. They loved each other dearly, and the bridegroom day after day took delight in showing his bride all the wonders and treasures of his coral palace. And she was never tired of wandering with him through its vast halls and gardens. Life seemed to them both like a long summer's day. 2 months passed in this happy way, and then the Dragon Queen fell ill and was obliged to stay in bed. The King was sorely troubled when he saw his precious bride so ill, and at once sent for the fish doctor to come and give her some medicine. He gave special orders to the servants to nurse her carefully, and to wait upon her with diligence, but in spite of all the nurse's assiduous care, and the medicine that the doctor prescribed, the young Queen showed no signs of recovery, but grew daily worse. Then the Dragon King interviewed the doctor and blamed him for not curing the Queen. The doctor was alarmed at Rin Jin's evident displeasure, and excused his want of skill by saying that although he knew the right kind of medicine to give the invalid, it was impossible to find it in the sea.
"Do you mean to tell me that you can't get the medicine here?"
asked the Dragon King.
"It is just as you say," said the doctor.
"Tell me what it is you want for the Queen," demanded Rin Jin.
"I want the liver of a live monkey," answered the doctor.
"The liver of a live monkey. Of course that will be most difficult to get," said the King.
"If we could only get that for the Queen, Her Majesty would soon recover," said the doctor.
"Very well, that decides it. We must get it somehow or other. But where are we most likely to find a monkey?"
asked the King. Then the doctor told the Dragon King that some distance to the south there was a monkey island where a great many monkeys lived.
"If only you could capture one of these monkeys," said the doctor.
"How can any of my people capture a monkey?" said the Dragon King, greatly puzzled. "The monkeys live on dry land, while we live in the water, and out of our element we are quite powerless. I don't see what we can do."
"That has been my difficulty too," said the doctor. "But amongst your innumerable servants you surely can find one who can go on shore for that express purpose."
"Something must be done,"
said the King, and calling his chief steward, he consulted him on the matter. The chief steward thought for some time, and then, as if struck by a sudden thought, said joyfully:
"I know what we must do. There is the kurage jellyfish. He is certainly ugly to look at, but he is proud of being able to walk on land with his 4 legs like a tortoise. Let us send him to the island of monkeys to catch one."
The jellyfish was then summoned to the King's presence, and was told by his Majesty what was required of him. The jellyfish, on being told of the unexpected mission which was to be entrusted to him, looked very troubled, and said that he had never been to the island in question, and as he had never had any experience in catching monkeys, he was afraid that he would not be able to get one.
"Well," said the chief steward, "if you depend on your strength or dexterity you will never catch a monkey. The only way is to play a trick on one." "How can I play a trick on a monkey? I don't know how to do it," said the perplexed jellyfish. "This is what you must do," said the wily chief steward. "When you approach the island of monkeys and meet some of them, you must try to get very friendly with one. Tell him that you are a servant of the Dragon King, and invite him to come and visit you and see the Dragon King's palace. Try and describe it to him as vividly as you can, the grandeur of the palace and the wonders of the sea, so as to arouse his curiosity and make him long to see it all." "But how am I to get the monkey here? You know monkeys don't swim," said the reluctant jellyfish. "You must carry him on your back. What is the use of your shell if you can't do that?" said the chief steward. "Won't he be very heavy?" queried Kurage again. "You mustn't mind that, for you are working for the Dragon King," replied the chief steward. "I will do my best then," said the jellyfish, and he swam away from the palace and started off towards the Monkey Island. Swimming swiftly, he reached his destination in a few hours, and landed by a convenient wave upon the shore. On looking round, he saw not far away a big pine tree with drooping branches, and on one of those branches was just what he was looking for, a live monkey. "I'm in luck," thought the jellyfish. "Now I must flatter the creature and try to entice him to come back with me to the palace, and my part will be done." So the jellyfish slowly walked towards the pine tree. In those ancient days the jellyfish had 4 legs and a hard shell like a tortoise. When he got to the pine tree he raised his voice and said: "How do you do, Mr. Monkey? Isn't it a lovely day?" "A very fine day," answered the monkey from the tree. "I have never seen you in this part of the world before. Where have you come from, and what is your name?" "My name is Kurage, or Jellyfish. I am one of the servants of the Dragon King. I have heard so much of your beautiful island that I have come on purpose to see it," answered the jellyfish. "I am very glad to see you," said the monkey. "By the by," said the jellyfish, "have you ever seen the palace of the Dragon King of the Sea where I live?" "I have often heard of it, but I have never seen it," answered the monkey. "Then you ought most surely to come. It is a great pity for you to go through life without seeing it. The beauty of the palace is beyond all description. It is certainly, to my mind, the most lovely place in the world," said the jellyfish. "Is it so beautiful as all that?" asked the monkey in astonishment. Then the jellyfish saw his chance, and went on describing to the best of his ability the beauty and grandeur of the Sea King's palace, and the wonders of the garden with its curious trees of white, pink, and red coral, and the still more curious fruits like great jewels hanging on the branches. The monkey grew more and more interested, and as he listened he came down the tree step by step, so as not to lose a word of the wonderful story. "I have got him at last," thought the jellyfish, but aloud he said: "Mr. Monkey, I must now go back. As you have never seen the palace of the Dragon King, won't you avail yourself of this splendid opportunity by coming with me? I shall then be able to act as guide and show you all the sights of the sea, which will be even more wonderful to you, a landlubber." "I should love to go," said the monkey, "but how am I to cross the water? I can't swim, as you surely know." "There is no difficulty about that. I can carry you on my back." "That will be troubling you too much," said the monkey. "I can do it quite easily. I am stronger than I look, so you needn't hesitate," said the jellyfish, and taking the monkey on his back he stepped into the sea. "Keep very still, Mr. Monkey," said the jellyfish. "You mustn't fall into the sea. I am responsible for your safe arrival at the King's palace." "Please don't go so fast, or I am sure I shall fall off," said the monkey. Thus they went along, the jellyfish skimming through the waves with the monkey sitting on his back. When they were about halfway, the jellyfish, who knew very little of anatomy,
began to wonder if the monkey had his liver with him or not.
"Mr. Monkey, tell me, have you such a thing as a liver with you?"
The monkey was very much surprised at this queer question, and asked what the jellyfish wanted with a liver.
"That is the most important thing of all," said the stupid jellyfish. "So as soon as I recollected it, I asked you if you had yours with you."
"Why is my liver so important to you?" asked the monkey.
"Oh, you will learn the reason later," said the jellyfish.
The monkey grew more and more curious and suspicious, and urged the jellyfish to tell him for what his liver was wanted, and ended up by appealing to his hearer's feelings by saying that he was very troubled at what he had been told. Then the jellyfish, seeing how anxious the monkey looked, was sorry for him and told him everything: how the Dragon Queen had fallen ill, and how the doctor had said that only the liver of a live monkey would cure her, and how the Dragon King had sent him to find one.
"Now I have done as I was told, and as soon as we arrive at the palace the doctor will want your liver, so I feel sorry for you," said the silly jellyfish.
The poor monkey was horrified when he learnt all this, and very angry at the trick played upon him. He trembled with fear at the thought of what was in store for him. But the monkey was a clever animal, and he thought it the wisest plan not to show any sign of the fear he felt, so he tried to calm himself, and to think of some way by which he might escape.
"The doctor means to cut me open, then take my liver out. Why, I shall die," thought the monkey.
At last a bright thought struck him, so he said quite cheerfully to the jellyfish:
"What a pity it was, Mr. Jellyfish, that you did not speak of this before we left the island." "If I had told why I wanted you to accompany me, you would certainly have refused to come," answered the jellyfish.
"You are quite mistaken," said the monkey. "Monkeys can very well spare a liver or two, especially when it is wanted for the Dragon Queen of the Sea. If I had only guessed of what you were in need, I should have presented you with one without waiting to be asked. I have several livers, but the greatest pity is, that as you did not speak in time, I have left all my livers hanging on the pine tree."
"Have you left your liver behind you?" asked the jellyfish.
"Yes," said the cunning monkey. "During the daytime I usually leave my liver hanging up on the branch of a tree, as it is very much in the way when I am climbing about from tree to tree. Today, listening to your interesting conversation, I quite forgot it, and left it behind when I came off with you. If only you had spoken in time, I should have remembered it, and should have brought it along with me." The jellyfish was very disappointed when he heard this, for he believed every word the monkey said. The monkey was of no good without a liver. Finally the jellyfish stopped, and told the monkey so. "Well," said the monkey, "that is soon remedied. I am really sorry to think of all your trouble, but if you will only take me back to the place where you found me, I shall soon be able to get my liver." The jellyfish did not at all like the idea of going all the way back to the island again, but the monkey assured him that if he would be so kind as to take him back, he would get his very best liver and bring it with him the next time. Thus persuaded, the jellyfish turned his course towards the Monkey Island once more. No sooner had the jellyfish reached the shore than the sly monkey landed, and getting up into the nearest pine tree where the jellyfish had first seen him, he cut several capers amongst the branches, with joy at being safe home again, and then looking down at the jellyfish, said: "So many thanks for all the trouble you have taken. Please present my compliments to the Dragon King on your return." The jellyfish wondered at this speech, and the mocking tone in which it was uttered. Then he asked the monkey if it wasn't his intention to come with him at once after getting his liver. The monkey replied laughingly that he couldn't afford to lose his liver, it was too precious.
"But remember your promise,"
pleaded the jellyfish, now very discouraged. "That promise was false, and anyhow it is now broken," answered the monkey. Then he began to jeer at the jellyfish, and told him that he had been deceiving him the whole time, that he had no wish to lose his life, which he certainly would have done had he gone on to the Sea King's palace to the old doctor waiting for him, instead of persuading the jellyfish to return under false pretenses. "Of course I won't give you my liver, but come and get it if you can," added the monkey mockingly from the tree. There was nothing for the jellyfish to do now but to repent of his stupidity, and to return to the Dragon King of the Sea and to confess his failure. So he started sadly and slowly to swim back. The last thing he heard as he glided away, leaving the island behind him, was the monkey laughing at him. Meanwhile the Dragon King, the doctor, the chief steward, and all the servants were waiting impatiently for the return of the jellyfish. When they caught sight of him approaching the palace, they hailed him with delight. They began to thank him profusely for all the trouble he had taken in going to the Monkey Island, and then they asked him where the monkey was. Now the day of reckoning had come for the jellyfish. He quaked all over as he told his story, how he had brought the monkey halfway over the sea, and then had stupidly let out the secret of his commission, how the monkey had deceived him by making him believe that he had left his liver behind him. The Dragon King's wrath was great, and he at once gave orders that the jellyfish was to be severely punished. The punishment was a horrible one. All the bones were to be drawn out from his living body, and he was to be beaten with sticks. The poor jellyfish, humiliated and horrified beyond all words, cried out for pardon, but the Dragon King's order had to be obeyed. The servants of the palace forthwith each brought out a stick and surrounded the jellyfish, and after pulling out his bones they beat him to a flat pulp, and then took him out beyond the palace gates and threw him into the water. Here he was left to suffer and repent his foolish chattering, and to grow accustomed to his new state of bonelessness. From this story it is evident that in former times the jellyfish once had a shell and bones something like a tortoise, but ever since the Dragon King's sentence was carried out on the ancestor of the jellyfishes, his descendants have all been soft and boneless, just as you see them today thrown up by the waves high upon the shores of Japan. End of Chapter 15. The Jellyfish and the Monkey. Recording by Scott Robbins. Chapter 16 of Japanese Fairy Tales. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Japanese Fairy Tales by Yei Theodora OZAKI. Chapter 16. The Quarrel of the Monkey and the Crab. Long, long ago, one bright autumn day in Japan, it happened that a pink-faced monkey and a yellow crab were playing together along the bank of a river. As they were running about, the crab found a rice dumpling and the monkey a persimmon seed. The crab picked up the rice dumpling and showed it to the monkey, saying, "Look what a nice thing I have found." Then the monkey held up his persimmon seed and said, "I also have found something good. Look!" Now, though the monkey is always very fond of persimmon fruit, he had no use for the seed he had just found. The persimmon seed is as hard and uneatable as a stone. He, therefore, in his greedy nature, felt very envious of the crab's nice dumpling, and he proposed an exchange. The crab naturally did not see why he should give up his prize for a hard stone-like seed, and would not consent to the monkey's proposition. Then the cunning monkey began to persuade the crab, saying, "How unwise you are not to think of the future! Your rice dumpling can be eaten now, and is certainly much bigger than my seed. But if you sow this seed in the ground, it will soon grow and become a great tree in a few years, and bear an abundance of fine ripe persimmons year after year. If only I could show it to you then
with the yellow fruit hanging on its branches. Of course, if you don't believe me, I shall sew it myself, though I am sure later on you will be very sorry that you did not take my advice." The simple-minded crab could not resist the monkey's clever persuasion. He at last gave in, and consented to the monkey's proposal, and the exchange was made. The greedy monkey soon gobbled up the dumpling, and with great reluctance gave up the persimmon seed to the crab. He would have liked to keep that too, but he was afraid of making the crab angry, and of being pinched by his sharp scissor-like claws. They then separated, the monkey going home to his forest trees, and the crab to his stones along the river side. As soon as the crab reached home, he put the persimmon seed in the ground as the monkey had told him. In the following spring the crab was delighted to see the shoot of a young tree push its way up through the ground. Each year it grew bigger, till at last it blossomed one spring, and in the following autumn bore some fine large persimmons. Among the broad, smooth, green leaves the fruit hung like golden balls, and as they ripened they mellowed to a deep orange. It was the little crab's pleasure to go out day by day and sit in the sun, and put out his long eyes in the same way as a snail puts out its horn, and watch the persimmons ripening to perfection. "How delicious they will be to eat!" he said to himself. At last one day he knew the persimmons must be quite ripe, and he wanted very much to taste one. He made several attempts to climb the tree, in the vain hope of reaching one of the beautiful persimmons hanging above him, but he failed each time, for a crab's legs are not made for climbing trees, but only for running along the ground and over stones, both of which he can do most cleverly. In his dilemma he thought of his old playmate the monkey, who, he knew, could climb trees better than anyone else in the world. He determined to ask the monkey to help him, and set out to find him. Running crab fashion up the stony river bank, over the pathways into the shadowy forest, the crab at last found the monkey taking an afternoon nap in his favorite pine tree, with his tail curled tight around a branch to prevent him from falling off in his dreams. He was soon wide awake, however, when he heard himself called, and eagerly listening to what the crab told him. When he heard that the seed which he had long ago exchanged for a rice dumpling had grown into a tree, and was now bearing good fruit, he was delighted, for he at once devised a cunning plan which would give him all the persimmons for himself. He consented to go with the crab to pick the fruit for him. When they both reached the spot, the monkey was astonished to see what a fine tree had sprung from the seed, and with what a number of ripe persimmons the branches were loaded. He quickly climbed the tree and began to pluck and eat as fast as he could one persimmon after another. Each time he chose the best and ripest he could find, and went on eating till he could eat no more. Not one would he give to the poor hungry crab waiting below, and when he had finished there was little but the hard, unripe fruit left. You can imagine the feelings of the poor crab after waiting patiently, for so long as he had done, for the tree to grow and the fruit to ripen, when he saw the monkey devouring all the good persimmons. He was so disappointed that he ran round and round the tree, calling to the monkey to remember his promise. The monkey at first took no notice of the crab's complaints, but at last he picked out the hardest, greenest persimmon he could find, and aimed it at the crab's head. The persimmon is as hard as stone when it is unripe. The monkey's missile struck home, and the crab was sorely hurt by the blow. Again and again, as fast as he could pick them, the monkey pulled off the hard persimmons and threw them at the defenseless crab till he dropped dead, covered with wounds all over his body. There he lay a pitiful sight at the foot of the tree he had himself planted. When the wicked monkey saw that he had killed the crab, he ran away from the spot as fast as he could, in fear and trembling, like a coward as he was.
Now the crab had a son who had been playing with a friend not far from the spot where this sad work had taken place. On the way home he came across his father dead, in a most dreadful condition. His head was smashed and his shell broken in several places, and around his body lay the unripe persimmons which had done their deadly work. At this dreadful sight the poor young crab sat down and wept. But when he had wept for some time, he told himself that this crying would do no good. It was his duty to avenge his father's murder, and this he determined to do. He looked about for some clue which would lead him to discover the murderer. Looking up at the tree, he noticed that the best fruit had gone, and that all around lay bits of peel and numerous seeds strewn on the ground, as well as the unripe persimmons which had evidently been thrown at his father. Then he understood that the monkey was the murderer, for he now remembered that his father had once told him the story of the rice dumpling and the persimmon seed. The young crab knew that monkeys liked persimmons above all other fruit, and he felt sure that his greed for the coveted fruit had been the cause of the old crab's death. Alas! He at first thought of going to attack the monkey at once, for he burned with rage. Second thoughts, however, told him that this was useless, for the monkey was an old and cunning animal, and would be hard to overcome. He must meet cunning with cunning, and ask some of his friends to help him, for he knew it would be quite out of his power to kill him alone. The young crab set out at once to call on the mortar, his father's old friend, and told him of all that had happened. He besought the mortar with tears to help him avenge his father's death. The mortar was very sorry when he heard the woeful tale, and promised at once to help the young crab punish the monkey to death. He warned him that he must be very careful in what he did, for the monkey was a strong and cunning enemy. The mortar now sent to fetch the bee and the chestnut, also the crab's old friends, to consult them about the matter. In a short time the bee and the chestnut arrived. When they were told all the details of the old crab's death and of the monkey's wickedness and greed, they both gladly consented to help the young crab in his revenge. After talking for a long time as to the ways and means of carrying out their plans, they separated, and Mr. Mortar went home with the young crab to help him bury his poor father. While all this was taking place, the monkey was congratulating himself, as the wicked often do before their punishment comes upon them, on all that he had done so neatly. He thought it quite a fine thing that he had robbed his friend of all his ripe persimmons, and then that he had killed him. Still, smile as hard as he might, he could not banish altogether the fear of the consequence should his evil deeds be discovered. If he were found out, and he told himself that this could not be, for he had escaped unseen, the crab's family would be sure to bear him hatred and seek to take revenge on him. So he would not go out, and kept himself at home for several days. He found this kind of life, however, extremely dull, accustomed as he was to the free life of the woods, and at last he said: "No one knows that it was I who killed the crab. I am sure that the old thing breathed his last before I left him. Dead crabs have no mouths. Who is there to tell that I am the murderer? Since no one knows, what is the use of shutting myself up and brooding over the matter? What is done cannot be undone." With this he wandered out into the crab's settlement, and crept about as slyly as possible near the crab's house, and tried to hear the neighbors' gossip round about. He wanted to find out what the crabs were saying about their chief's death, for the old crab had been the chief of the tribe. But he heard nothing, and said to himself: "They are all such fools that they don't know and don't care who murdered their chief." Little did he know, in his so-called monkey's wisdom, that this seeming unconcern was part of the young crab's plan. He purposely pretended not to know who had killed his father, and also to believe that he had met his death through his own fault. By this means he could the better keep the secret revenge on the monkey, which he was meditating. So the monkey returned home from his walk quite content. He told himself he had nothing now to fear. One fine day, when the monkey was sitting at home, he was surprised by the appearance of a messenger from the young crab. While he was wondering what this might mean, the messenger bowed before him and said: "I have been sent by my master to inform you that his father died the other day in falling from a persimmon tree while trying to climb the tree after fruit. This, being the 7th day, is the first anniversary after his death, and my master has prepared a little festival in his father's honor, and bids you come to participate in it, as you are one of his best friends. My master hopes you will honor his house with your kind visit." When the monkey heard these words, he rejoiced in his inmost heart, for all his fears of being suspected were now at rest. He could not guess that a plot had just been set in motion against him. He pretended to be very surprised at the news of the crab's death, and said: "I am indeed very sorry to hear of your chief's death. We were great friends, as you know. I remember that we once exchanged a rice dumpling for a persimmon seed. It grieves me much to think that seed was in the end the cause of his death. I accept your kind invitation with many thanks. I shall be delighted to do honor to my poor old friend." And he screwed some false tears from his eyes. The messenger laughed inwardly and thought: "The wicked monkey is now dropping false tears, but within a short time he shall shed real ones." But aloud he thanked the monkey politely and went home. When he had gone, the monkey laughed aloud at what he thought was the young crab's innocence, and without the least feeling began to look forward to the feast to be held that day in honor of the dead crab, to which he had been invited. He changed his dress and set out solemnly to visit the young crab. He found all the members of the crab's family and his relatives waiting to receive him and welcome him. As soon as the bows of meeting were over, they led him to a hall. Here the young chief mourner came to receive him. Expressions of condolence and thanks were exchanged between them, and then they all sat down to a luxurious feast and entertained the monkey as the guest of honor. The feast over, he was next invited to the tea ceremony room to drink a cup of tea. When the young crab had conducted the monkey to the tea room, he left him and retired. Time passed, and still he did not return. At last the monkey became impatient. He said to himself: "This tea ceremony is always a very slow affair. I am tired of waiting so long. I am very thirsty after drinking so much sake at the dinner." He then approached the charcoal fireplace and began to pour out some hot water from the kettle boiling there, when something burst out from the ashes with a great pop and hit the monkey right in the neck. It was the chestnut, one of the crab's friends, who had hidden himself in the fireplace. The monkey, taken by surprise, jumped backward and then started to run out of the room. The bee, who was hiding outside the screens, now flew out and stung him on the cheek. The monkey was in great pain, his neck was burned by the chestnut, and his face badly stung by the bee, but he ran on screaming and chattering with rage. Now the stone mortar had hidden himself with several other stones on the top of the crab's gate, and as the monkey ran underneath, the mortar and all fell down on top of the monkey's head. Was it possible for the monkey to bear the weight of the mortar falling on him from the top of the gate? He lay crushed and in great pain, quite unable to get up. As he lay there helpless, the young crab came up, and, holding his great claw scissors over the monkey, he said: "Do you now remember that you murdered my father?" "Then you are my enemy?" gasped the monkey brokenly. "Of course. said the young crab.
"It was your father's fault, not mine,"
gasped the unrepentant monkey.
"Can you still lie? I will soon put an end to your breath."
And with that he cut off the monkey's head with his pincer claws. Thus the wicked monkey met his well-merited punishment, and the young crab avenged his father's death. This is the end of the story of the monkey, the crab, and the persimmon seed. End of chapter 16. The Quarrel of the Monkey and the Crab. Recording by Scott Robbins.
Wow, that was kinda unexpected. Got his head chopped off. Thank you, Angie. It's pattern I did up. I'm going to do a lap blanket and which I figure will be 42 squares. So I just finish up doing all the. Yeah, you missed a lot of it. I'll put you in my tweeter list to get tweeted out when we're doing this, and so you'll have a better knowing. And yeah, so usually it's on Sundays at noon Central is when I start, and on Tuesday at 6 Central. We slept way too late, yeah. Yeah, that'll happen. Well, it's 3:33 here now, so for me it's quite a bit later. When I start at 2:30 my time. I know it's a weird time, because I'm in Newfoundland. Basically, hit New York and go north and east a little bit further. That's where I am. So yeah, this is a pattern that I did up. I'm doing a tutorial for it. And I tried doing a recording today and it messed up again. So yeah, no, that sucks when you can't get to sleep. Usually I'm awake till 2 or 3 in the morning, but I wake up at 10 almost every day, regardless of the time I go to sleep. So, yeah, it's always fun. Yeah, and it's gotta be hard. Well, the Sundays, like I said, it starts at noon Central, and then the Tuesday, get the right tea day, Nadine. It's at 6 Central. So, you might be able to make those a little more often if you're not working. Haven't worked a late night in a while. Yeah, it can be rough if you don't do it very often. But like I said, we're all done this now. So what I do here, Angie, is I do a audiobook stuff. And so if you have a request, you can make a request. I play books from LibriVox because they're public domain books. So if you have a request, you can just have a look at LibriVox in my previous videos and see what is new. So you can request something, and if there's if it's like this here is a book of short stories. So usually I do a few, and if somebody wants a long book in between, I might just do the long book and come back to short stories after. But I can also break it up so that if you're only available for, say, the one day, I can always break it up that way so that the book will be played on days that you're able to make it. So I'm quite flexible on what I do. So, all that kind of fun stuff. But we're all done now. So like, share, and subscribe, and all that kind of fun stuff. And you have a wonderful day. Love yous. Bye. Where's the button? Where's the button?